The second tutorial about placing windows is simply to deal with the width and the height of each window. And so you could tell at the initial tutorial, the first one, that I wasn't too concerned about the width or the height of the window. I just wanted to put the proper number of panes, glass panels, in the location, and then I'll go back in and individually take a look at all the conditions that I have to actually customize that window. So I'll take a look at this section now. Maybe WT again, so I'll have the 3. So here's my laundry room. I want the top of the window to have a transom on top of it. That might not be a bad time to put that in because, see, I have these really high ceilings. And so normally I would put the top of the windows to line up with the top of the doors. Remember, my doors are 7 feet tall. So if we measure this from the top of the window down to here, it is 7 feet. And so I want the top of my windows to line up with the top of the doors. So that would be the correct height. And I could have set that over here as well. If I click on the properties, I can set my head height at 7 feet. I could have done that in the properties dialog box. So the reason I want a transom is that, geez, I have so much space above the window that it would be nice to put a transom on top of there. And maybe even put a transom, a nice glass transom on top of all of the doors as well. That always has looked nice to me. That might be a bit much for this class, but maybe if this were a real project, I might actually consider that. Okay, so now what do we do? So I'm going to go back over to my architecture, back over to window, and then now I'm going to go try to pick that transom. Let's see. I think this is the one that Colby sent me this morning. Let's see. Yeah, I think it might be this one. So I'll put that in and I'll just click right here. Okay, so let's see. I click outside of, let's click outside of it. So it looks like it's in backwards because I can see the brick ledge. So I'll click on that and hit the space bar and that'll flip it around. And now let's line it up and see how my width is. Now it looks pretty good, but I'm going to make the width of these windows wider and I'm going to actually drop them down lower. So let's do that. So if my upper cabinets in the laundry room are going to be the same height as these, I would either, generally we have a slight backsplash here, maybe 6, maybe 8 inches, but I like my backsplash to go all the way to the bottom of the cabinet. So this, in my kitchen, I will have a backsplash that goes all the way to there. And I would assume that I'm going to have the same thing in my laundry room. So I'm going to just come over here and annotate and draw a detail line and come across here and see how much would I need to add to that window, leaving it at the 7-foot height. How much would I have to add to that window in order to make it? So if I add 6 7/16 of an inch to it, that might get the window down there. So let's try that. Would have been better for me to measure that. Now notice I'm not measuring from the bottom of the window, measuring from a different point, 6 7/16. So that may or may not be. I'm just going to copy that, Control C, and then I'm going to click on the window and edit the type, duplicate it, and instead of being 4 foot wide by 2 feet high, it's going to be 2 feet, Control V, high. So I'll put the H back in there and say okay. And then I need to change the height of that window, which right now is only 2 feet, and Control V. Let's see what happens. That might not be enough. Let's see what happens. What's happening here? I can't scroll back to see what's happening. Highlighted inserts overlap, so I'll say okay to that. And then I still want that to be 7 feet, so I'll just change this number right here to 7 and hit enter. And yeah, the bottom of my window moved down to there. And so how tall do I want to make the transoms? This is now what I did, just to talk about that, you know, the Colby and all of the other window manufacturers have standard sizes. And so they'll make a window for you as a custom size, but it's going to cost you or your client extra money in order to use those custom sizes. But in this case, I'm not referring to the Colby catalog to see what the actual standard sizes are. I'm just modifying it, and you might want to do the same thing if this were a real project, unless cost was not an issue. But I've never seen that to be the case, you know, that anybody would be willing to unnecessarily spend additional money. If it's impossible to create what you want to create with a standard window, then of course you can justify having a custom size window made. But generally, for most of the house, I always try to use the standard sizes. And so if this were a real project, I'd be paying attention to the standard sizes. But for this class, it's just a demonstration. So of how to change the window sizes. And I want to make it wider too, because I don't think that's quite wide enough. So if I click on this and edit it, right now, if we look at the constraints or the parameters here, this window is 4 feet wide. Now, notice that the rough opening is bigger than the actual width of the window, and generally it's a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch bigger, so that there's room to fit the window in. If you had made the opening the same size as the window, you wouldn't be able to fit it in. So some of your windows don't automatically update. Like Colby, one of the things I like about Colby is that I change the width of that window. It's also going to change the rough opening width of that window as well. And so that's not necessarily true on all of your families that you would be downloading, but it does here. So let's see. Well, I could make that, instead of 4 feet wide, let's make it 6 feet wide. And so I need to change, did I duplicate this already? No. So I need to duplicate it. I'm going to make it 6 feet wide. So now it says 4 feet wide. I'll change that to 6 feet wide and take away the 2. And then I'm going to just come down, and we've made it 6 feet here. And then I'll say okay to that. Let's see what happens. So now the window gets a little wider. That looks much better to me. If I take a look at that, I like it a lot. It's the right height. It's gonna, my backsplash is gonna go up to here. And so the sill of the window is okay. Seems a little bit high maybe, but that's where my backsplash is. So unless I want my windows to project into the backsplash, which you can do that, that's not necessarily wrong. That's probably a good place for it to be height-wise. And then I need to change this guy now too. So edit the type, duplicate it, and instead of 256 inches wide, it's going to be the same 6 feet wide. And we'll get rid of the number here. We'll say, okay, and I'm going to change this window to 6 feet, the width of it, and we'll say, okay. And so now that looks Good. Let's line it up, the top of this window with the bottom of this window. And there's an extra line here. I don't know what that line is, but so it's not really perfect. I should go in and modify that, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. So I'd go back and investigate that and see what I need to do to actually make it exactly what I want. But now if we take a look here, now look at this. See, this is the issue that I had before with the transom, is that it's sticking out to the face of the brick, and I don't want it to do that because that's not where, see how this window is set back to the wall and the brick is laid up to the window, but you still have the thickness of the brick right here. So now I need to do the same thing here. I'm going to come over to edit the type and go, I'm looking for the, I think they put it up here on this one. I want to know how far back into the wall I want that to sit. So we're looking, exterior wall offset. Let's see, I might have picked the wrong one. And I'll go 4. Let's see what happens there. Yep, I did pick the wrong one. So when I say I picked the wrong one, Colby sent me a new window on the transom that works, and you can see what happens now. It doesn't work. What happens here is the window is sticking out even farther from the wall, and so I'm going to change that. I'm just going to click on it and then go over to my options here, and I'm picking this one. So I'll come back up and I'll use this one. Let's see what happens with that one. So it's still sticking out from the wall or to the face of the brick, and I don't want it to do that. Escape, pick the window, edit the type, come, and I think it's up here on this one. Maybe not. Let's go down here. Let's see what happens. 4 inches. Say okay. Again, that's not the right one. So I'll take a look and see what else do I have here for my transoms. Window double transom unit. So I changed that one. And neither one of those are working, but I think I have a third one. Here we go. This is the one I want it to be. So let's change that to the 4 foot. There we go. Look how nice that is now. Now it sits back into the let's look at it in section. It sits back into the wall correctly. So if we go to the section now and zoom in on that, yeah. See how my window, it's not quite right. That is right in terms of how it's sitting in the wall. And this is not exactly right. See how the glass doesn't line up, but this is how their transoms are made. So the glass doesn't actually line up, which I think is not a good thing. But anyway, so I've set the window back into the wall 4 inches so that it actually sits on the wall instead of sitting on the face of the brick. And you can see that the width isn't correct. So if I go back to this view now, go to view, and I'm going to measure, well, we said that was 6 feet. So I'll change this, edit the type, duplicate it, and I'll just call it 6 and say okay, and then change the width of it. I'm going to change the width of it right here to 6 feet and say okay. It's close, but not quite. I want to measure this right here just to see. I have to take a ½ inch off of that because I'm a quarter on each side. So I'm going to click on it, edit the type, duplicate it, and instead of being 6, it's going to be 5 feet 11.5 inches. And that means I have to change this guy to 5 feet 11.5 inches. And let's say now, let's see what happens. Now it lines up. See? So it lines up. Okay, so I'm looking at the actual, I'm doing something that I would be doing in a real project, but not in this one, because this is fine. But I'm just trying to see what the difference is here. I guess the glass does line up here. So, okay, we'll say that's okay. So now, when you look at the outside of the house, I have placed my first window in there, and it's the right width. It looks good in the plan view. It looks good in the elevation from the inside of the house. And then I'm just questioning, do I want to make that transom a little bit taller? So, well, I'm going to leave it like that. Well, let's see how tall it is altogether here. Let's measure it from here to the top of the window. There it is. Almost a foot taller. Not a lot of glass in there, but it looks good to me. But maybe we would want to make more height to that. And in your project, you don't have to put in transoms. This was just a guideline, so I'm going to delete that. And there's the beginning of my first refinement of the windows in the laundry room.